So 300,000 Black women had left the labor force in the last quarter of 2025. So what about it? My name is Katrina Monique, and I am a certified executive coach, advisor, and entrepreneur. And I am the host of the How She Got Free podcast and the Sovereign Shift podcast, where we teach you how to not only get free, but how to stay free. Now, I'm post workout, so, I'm looking like I'm looking. But it was important for me to get these thoughts out of my mind as I was coming back from my walk, because this has been pressing on me for quite some time. Is it important? Should we be concerned about the fact that approximately 300,000 Black women have left the labor force this last quarter of 2025, and that the unemployment rate for Black women is about 6.3%? Should we be concerned? Yes. Should we be worried? No. So my background, I have a degree in accounting, and I've been in the accounting field or financial management and business management space for almost 30 years. With the first 12 or so years focused primarily on accounting, and then the remaining of the years doing business development, organizational development, strategic management. But it's always surrounding the numbers. And as a consultant, as an advisor, when I go into companies and organizations, I focus on organizational development, how to make organizational better, more sustainable, more efficient. But I look at things through a financial lens. So I look at the numbers first. And so therefore, you may hire me as a fractional CFO. I say all that to say that because I have that lens of how I look at and evaluate the state of an organization, when I see statistics and I see news, flashes about, these jarring things that we see, my mind immediately goes into the mind of an accountant and a strategist to want to understand the data. And so what I did was I pulled the data, because one thing I know is that the numbers tell a story that management can't tell, that the people can't tell. The numbers tell the story. And it's void of emotion, it's void of any feelings, and it's just data, it's just information. And the reason why I believe it's important to look and understand data from a non-emotional lens is because you can see what should be a concern, you should be worried about, and you can actually see what path to take forward. The emotional part of it doesn't allow you to understand really what's happening. It's just alarming, and the instinct is to activate survival mode, and we go into how can we fix or what should we do. So another aspect of business and organizational development is in problem solving. And problem solving, if you are, in the Sigma thing, or you study, problem solving theories and methodologies, then you know that one of the processes when you are in a crisis mode in a company is you see that there's a crisis and you want to fix it. The first thing that you do is you identify where the beginning of this problem is, and you immediately stop the bleeding. You stop the bleeding just so that you can kind of stop whatever's happening. But then the real work begins, because now you have to now analyze and see and research, looking at patterns, looking at data, looking at the process from the beginning, going all the way back to the beginning of a thing, and then going all the way over and seeing how this happened, asking those questions, asking why. And the more you ask those questions and you're asking why should we do this? Why is this happening? Why did you put that there? Why was that there? Why did you put, the more you start to realize the source of the issue. And once you can identify the source of the problem, that will typically lead you to the solution. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because when I saw the statistic, my immediate thought was, well, why is that a concern? What is behind those numbers? And of course, I did some research. Out of all the research that I found, this is the piece that I wanted to point out. Since COVID, since 2020, when COVID hit, the unemployment rate spiked 10%, regardless of race. 2021, it dropped down to about 8%. I'm rounding up. So it was about 8% across the board. Around 2022, we started to see that the unemployment rate kind of dropped between 5%, 6%. Since 2021, 22 to 2025, the unemployment rate specifically for Black people and Black women has always been around 5 and 6% since COVID. Now, prior to COVID, you know, we got a pre-COVID, we got a PC time, and we got a AC time. Before COVID, BC, and after COVID, AC. So in BC time, before COVID time, those statistics the unemployment rate numbers will tell a slightly different story. But post-COVID, we see that the unemployment rate for the past 4 years has been between 5 and 6% for Black women. It has not changed. This is important information here. The last time that there has been a jump in a quarter of Black women leaving the labor force, because this has happened before. This is not an anomaly. 300,000 Black women leaving the workforce is not an anomaly. This has happened before. The last time this happened was in 2023. And it was approximately 215 or so thousand Black women that left the labor force. Now, why did they leave? I don't know. I haven't gotten to that level of detail. But my accounting brain, my strategic management brain, my complex problem solving brain says, look and follow the data. Look and follow the river. Let's go upstream. Let's go downstream. Let's look and see what's happening. Another piece of information that's important is that those 300 and so thousand jobs that with women that left the labor force, the industry that was predominantly impacted was about a third federal government jobs. Okay. Federal government jobs. Why were a lot of those federal government jobs abolished? Why? There's a lot of reasons, and we know that this administration had a lot to do with it, if not all to do with it. But what's included in the why was the dismantling of DEI. Now, there's a lot of debate about DEI. You know, is it good? Was it beneficial? We have all these opinions, and I have my own opinions. But I'm just speaking data, information, complex problem solving, looking at this problem, and really understanding what's happened, like what this current state of things. And why is that important to do? Because when we're thinking about economic empowerment, if we're thinking about what it would take to create sovereignty for the Black community, for women and for Black women, we have to take a moment to understand the current state that we are in from a non-emotional, practical, data-driven lens. We can put in our feelings and our passions later. But now let's just look at the information, okay? I'm not going to get too, intellectual with the DEI stuff. I'm just kind of giving very high, just succinct. Here is where we are. Here's what we know. We know that when this administration took office, that DEI was immediately on the chopping block. It had already been some precursors to that, but once this administration came in, it was done. We knew this was coming. We knew what was happening. When you look at the statistics as well of what industries do Black women typically choose in our careers, it's a predominance in government jobs, healthcare, education. Emphasis on government jobs. Now, I don't know about you. This is more anecdotal right now, anecdotal right now. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, um, Washington, D.C., one of the first in my family to go to college. I grew up in Washington, D.C., which is the home of the federal government. The biggest industry employer is the government in Washington, D.C., one of them, right? And so I was always encouraged to get my degree, and the degree that would pay good money, and to get me a good government job. Why? Why is that always, or has always been, the mantra that has been uh, pushed to Black people, period, and Black women specifically? Is because for a lot of us, we have been behind when it comes to economic mobility and wealth in this country. And so what is one of the main ways we can build a wealth plan for us? What is necessary in order to create wealth? Stability, income, flow, right? And we all know that the government is stable. You're going to get a pension. You're going to get good benefits. If you can get in the government, it's hard to get out. You got to be on some stuff to get out the government or leave on your own accord, right? For many, many, many Black people, government jobs is the way that we entered into the middle class, that we were able to send our children off to college, that we were able to purchase our first home and keep it, establish some level of wealth. So, of course, getting in the government makes a lot of sense, right? Where am I going with all of this information? What I'm going with this information is that there's more than meets the eye. And we have been here before. And this is less about this jarring statistic that we are leaving the labor force, but more about the economic condition of our community. The economic condition that has told Black women that we have to push through survival mode. We can acknowledge the fight, but we have to push through. Where we don't have access, when we don't have the knowledge, what we do have is education. It's a difference. Education and knowledge is different. Where we don't know what else to do, we do the thing that we can do. But what is happening here is that the paradigm has already shifted years ago. COVID was the paradigm shift. And we have slowly resisted changing to the paradigm. Even when you look at the media, I understand the need to pay attention to what's happening. But we got to be careful about propaganda in the media that fuels the fear within our community and ignites the survival mode within us. Because not everybody, because here's a statistic that we don't know yet. We don't know if everybody in that number left on their own accord or if they were laid off. Why did they leave? Did some of them quit? Did some of them move over to different industry? Did some of them become entrepreneurs? Did some of them retire? Let's keep that in mind. Retirement age is starting to creep up for a lot of Gen Xers now. The older Gen Xers are now many of them are in retirement age, especially if they work in the government. They're ready to cash in their pensions. Some people are leaving the workforce and starting businesses. And yes, some have been laid off. We have to look at the full landscape. If people are leaving the workforce every single quarter, but then you have a jump in one quarter because we knew that these federal layoffs were happening, is it a crisis or is it expected? Right? And should we be worried or should we be pivoting? And should we be understanding and should we be aware of what paradigm has been shifting this whole time? And to not get caught up in the propaganda that is intended to rile you up emotionally and make you feel like now I have to get into survival mode. Oh my God, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to do this? Baby, that was always the issue. That was the issue 5 years ago, right? Depending on your job, depending on your employer to take care of you has always been an issue. Always. There's no job security. It's always an issue. It's always an issue. And so what am I saying? I'm saying that now that people are getting the attention that this paradigm has shifted, many of you are just getting it. It changed years ago. And some of y'all are like, oh, okay, it changed. Do. I'm still living. Yeah, I got my good government job. I got my good job. Now you getting popped on the head and saying, yeah, it's shifted. Like, when y'all gonna get it? So what do we need to do? Knowing what we know, and there's still more data and more statistics we need to look at, but just in what I shared here, what do we need to do? What's the plan, right? How do we move forward? Now we need to start looking at this paradigm that has shifted and what does it tell us? And then what do we know and what don't we know? What do we need to know? But before we can even get there, I believe that the global community, or the I don't know, the community of Black women, the community of women, need to do some inner work. We have to look within, look at our current way of living, how we look at the world, how we interact in the world. Are any of us free? Are you really free in your ability to choose what is best for you? You spent years working in this space of expectation of how you're supposed to proceed with building your life and your lifestyle, but not necessarily the one that is anchored in truth, freedom, liberation, and sovereignty, to where that the shift in the economy can happen and you might get a little jolted, you might get a little, a little judged, right? But you ain't knocked off your square all the time. You don't get struck back into survival mode in that way, right? The survivor in us is always going to be there, but she comes out in a way that is less about maintaining the status quo, but about recognizing that she still has to move forward. And what does that look like? She knows when it's time to pivot. Activate survival mode in the pivot, not in the status quo. Activate survival mode in the pivot. Do not activate survival mode in the status quo. Now that we're here, it is not time to go back to the status quo of how do I find me a job? Do I need to upskill? Do I need to learn something else? Do I need to get a new credential? Do I need to go find another job in another industry? That is the status quo. Now that you're here, it is time to look inward as to where are you still bounded, in bondage, in chains to a way of living, a paradigm that we are no longer in. We are behind the paradigm. We are behind it. It's time to get in it and know that it's here, whether we like it or not. And the reality of it is your gender and your race doesn't matter. And I'm saying this as a Black woman. At the end of the day, what is going to allow Black women to pivot is for us to recognize our gender and our sex as a power for us and us only. That when we're out here in this world, we got to move. We got to pivot, and we have to be able to do the things that will allow us to move and to be sustainable and sovereign regardless of our race, regardless of our gender. You know how to survive. That's the status quo. Survival is the status quo. Let's do something different, y'all. Let's pivot. Let's pivot. Let's get into spaces, I believe, where there are women and men that are doing the inner work of liberation and freedom here and here to unchain those mental chains, those locks, shift your identity of how you see yourself and even your positioning in this world. Get into those rooms. Look at how you're spending, what you're spending on. What does middle class even mean? Get into rooms where people are having conversations that is not like the status quo. Get into rooms where the conversations are people who are riding the wave. They are literally riding the economic wave. Get into those rooms. And those rooms are where you're going to understand what industries are out there for us that we have not tapped into or we are so underrepresented in. There's nothing wrong with working for the government. The public sector is important. I work in the public sector. I know how important it is. Having degrees in education and finance and all these other things, nothing wrong with that. Healthcare, we need healthcare. But that's not where we stop. The conversation has to continue of where we are encouraging the women in our lives to look at I'll just give a quick example. If you are a W-2 earner and you have been for the past 20 years or 10 years or whatever, where are we educating each other? And I know these things are happening, and I know women are doing this. So I'm not saying that it's not happening, but I'm saying that these conversations need to be louder. We need to turn these up when we see statistics like that instead of turning it down and turning up the survival mode. That's what I'm saying. The communities out there that you are already out there teaching women financial literacy, teaching women how to buy assets, teaching women how to grow their money, teaching women how to invest in businesses, teaching women how to invest in businesses that are in boring industries that AI cannot penetrate and dominate. Teaching women how to buy into AI technology so that we become the owners. Looking at recession-proof industries. Looking at the way you approach motherhood and being a partner and being a friend. All of this shit is connected. All of this stuff is connected. It's all connected. Those rooms need to turn up the volume. They need to get louder because the paradigm has shifted and we need to ride with the wave. Your race and your gender is a superpower and it is your secret weapon. But what we get used to doing is allowing it to be victimized in the media. You cannot see, it is my belief that when you see statistics like that put us out there, it's information, it's data. When you look at it as data and not as something that gets, oh, what's going on? Look at it as data. One of the things that I teach with my clients, and I've been doing this for years, whenever I teach my clients that I coach, and even my consulting clients, whenever they're in a space where there's fear, there's been a shift in their business, a shift in their organization, they're losing money, something has happened, right? The one thing that it happens in our personal lives and it happens in our businesses and it happens in our organization. This is a human experience. Whenever we are faced with a feeling of something happening that's bad that can destroy us, we immediately go into fear mode. And fear mode puts you in fight, flight, fawn, right? You either gonna freeze. I've seen that in businesses. I see people fight through and push through and with arrogance, like it's not happening, and they just act like it ain't happening. And I see other people flight, where they just run, they quit, they give up, or they act like it ain't happening, right? I see it because that fear gets activated and you want to go into protection and survival mode as best as you can. But let me tell you over and over and over again, what will always defeat fear, what will always defeat survival mode is curiosity. Simple. When curiosity gives you a moment, it gives you a moment to calm that fear down for just a minute and to not be emotionally attached to whatever is happening in your reality right now. That you can look at your salary or your profits in your company dwindle down 30% and not emotionally react, but to take a moment with curiosity, yes, and ask the question, what's going on here? Why is this happening? What do I need to see? Tell me more. Show me more. Give me something else. Am I afraid for Black women? Absolutely not. Not at all. Hence why I feel like conversations like this, the one that I'm having here, need to be turned up. Need to be turned up. We got to get louder with this conversation, because this conversation is the one that I believe will ignite inside of a community of Black women, a community of whoever, to recognize that there are rooms that we need to be in